All right, good morning, guys. In case you were wondering about the odd intro, very delicate to put on the shades. Today, I'm working on efficiency, and efficient driving is a delicate process. So I wanted to show you guys a few things about the Model 3, some specifics regarding the way Tesla does things, and as far as how they treat the rating of the car, as far as what they show on the screen that you should be getting out of a charge, how to achieve maximum range out of the car. Okay, so today I've got a lot more driving than I normally do, so I actually set the limit up at 90%. So we're going to do some efficiency testing here. So you can see I show 285 miles on the clock. Actually, when it finished charging, I had 287 miles, so whatever, take that as you will. But 285 to 287 when charged to 90%. And let's see, I did one quick drive yesterday that I haven't canceled out yet, that I was 169 watt hours per mile for 3.7 miles, small loop round trip that I did. But today we're gonna see what kind of efficiency we can get out of the car. Now, it's supposed to rain a little bit today, and that always screws up efficiency, so this will be a good real-world test. I do have my 18-inch, my stock 18-inch wheels and tires on the car. To get started today, once again, I have installed the original 18-inch wheels and tires. I do not have the hubcaps on. They are currently at 49 psi of pressure. So that's you can check that on the screen here for those of you that are unfamiliar with the Model 3. And I do not have the Aero wheel caps, hubcaps on. There's a bunch of reasons for that. The main reason that I removed them is because I just don't like the look of them. I like the look of the wheels without the hubcaps. And actually, the hubcaps don't really affect the efficiency as much as you might think. They actually affect it more on the expressway than they do town-to-town driving, and I do mostly town-to-town. I probably average 40 miles an hour throughout the day. It's up at like 75 that those make a difference, but admittedly they make almost no discernible difference whatsoever. The efficiency increase that you see with the 18-inch wheel and tire package has almost nothing to do with the hubcaps. The hubcaps are like less than 1% or something efficiency. It is the tires primarily. So these are extraordinarily efficient, low rolling resistant tires, and so they are. It's the 18-inch tires that give you the range with this car. So anyway, Tesla rates the long-range rear-wheel drive Model 3 at 325 miles of driving range. That is based on internal capacity of the battery at 225 watt hours of energy consumption per mile of travel. So it is not, when you look at when you hit the battery icon and it says you have 283 miles of range left, that is not a measure of, well, you were driving this way before, we expect you to get such and such range by the time you reach your destination. That's not what that is. What that is Tesla has a fixed expectation of 225 watt hours per mile of energy consumption, and that fixed expectation is what this range is balanced against. So if I hypermile and hypermile and hypermile, it'll never show that I have any more range, per charge than I do. If I floor it everywhere, it won't show that I have any less range. It just, my expected range won't match what I'm actually getting. So, and I'll go into this a little bit more in depth later, but so let's see here. So on the consumption graph, and I'll show this up close, I'll hold the camera up close to the screen, but for those of you just starting out this video that don't believe me, if you go into this this graph on consumption, there's a couple of stark horizontal lines. The graph is your power consumption, and there's different scales. There's over the last 5 miles, over the last 15, and over the last 30. There's a dashed line, that's what you're achieving, and then there's a fixed line that says rated. That fixed line that says rated, that's what the car is rated at, and it never changes. Tesla has it fixed on the screen at 225 watt hours per mile, period. That's where it is. So I've had people argue with me in the comments section about this, where they say, well, you know, this indicated range of battery, that has nothing to do with what's really in the battery. That has everything to do with how you drive. No, it doesn't. It is balanced against or measured against this solid line that never moves. And I've tested that. I've tried driving really hard and I've tried driving really casual. That solid line never changes. What does change is this number here that shows projected range. So based on the way I'm driving, it's expecting me to get 347, or now it went up to 351 miles of range based on the last 30 miles of driving, and that's always fluctuating. This here, this number on the screen that says how much capacity is in the battery right now, or how much charge, that is a fixed number based on the car expecting you to drive 225 watt hours per mile. So that's a quick explanation there. So here's an energy graph. Now, here's the power consumption over the last 30 miles. And the solid line is what Tesla expects you to get. That's a permanent line it says rated. That's a permanent line at what the car's rated at, which is roughly 325 watt hours per mile. The dotted line is the range that you're actually achieving. So you can see that I've been achieving 194 watt hours per mile, even though Tesla rates the car at 225 watt hours per mile. So for those that are unfamiliar with this, the lower this number is, the better your range, because that's how much consumption per mile you have. So the car's rated at 225. I'm achieving 194. Now here's a cool thing. When you go to trip, up at the top, here it shows my state of charge, 86%, 88%. So I'm up right near 90%. In fact, you can see that it's actually a sort of a shade below 90% based on this graph. But this is the expected energy usage and percentage left in the battery as I continue on my journey. In fact, you can see it goes up. That's because I'll be going downhill and regenning there. So my trip should follow that graph line until when I reach my destination, the car expects me to have 83% left. Now that has nothing to do with past driving performance. This has everything to do with comparing my driving to that fixed line, which is 225 watt hours per mile. So hit the trip tab, and I'm going to pay attention to that through this trip and see how it goes. So you can see the green line is the path, the efficiency that I'm seeing. Let me put it in autopilot here. There we go. So the gray line is what the car is expecting in current consumption. And the green line is the current consumption that I'm actually using. So you can see I'm drastically more efficient than the car is expecting for this particular trip to this destination. So we'll keep an eye on it and see how it goes. Now, when I say you should drive delicately or gently, basically hypermiling is a matter of minimizing power use and maximizing any little blessing you can get. Downhill coasting, or there are many opportunities to improve your driving efficiency. One opportunity is how you accelerate. The harder you accelerate, the more energy draw you're going to use. That's obvious. But I've had people say, well, but if you take 20 seconds to hit 60 or 10 seconds to hit 60, you're using, though you're using more energy, you're only using it for half the time. So it should be the same, but it's not. The harder you accelerate, let's say you cut your acceleration time in half. You go 0 to 60 in 20 seconds and it takes a certain amount of energy, or 0 to 60 in 10 seconds. anytime you cut acceleration time in half, you quadruple the energy required to get there. Now, there's internal losses and different other things that occur. Now, there seems to be a bit of disagreement and misunderstanding when it comes to maximizing range. And much of what I'm going to say has to do with either EVs or gas cars or hybrids. Now, hybrids are a little bit unique in that with a hybrid, you're trying to maximize, especially a non-plug-in hybrid like a standard Prius or my Ford C-Max hybrid, the standard non-plug-in hybrids. Those cars are unique in that there's a vast difference in energy consumption based on how often the engine kicks on. And so these principles are exaggerated, or my experience has been that these principles are exaggerated on a standard non-plug-in hybrid versus an EV or a gas car. And that's a whole other discussion. Maybe I can do a video in my old C-Max. My son currently owns it. I could do a video on that if you guys would like. But a couple of general principles is just efficiency. So you've got, as I mentioned before, you've got acceleration rate. So if you accelerate less abruptly or more smoothly, you'll get better range. Also, if you decelerate more smoothly, you'll get more range. And I've heard people say, well, but since with an EV or a hybrid you've got regen, well, it's better to slow down more rapidly. Well, not necessarily, because if you max out the regen, even though you are recapturing energy, if you regen hard versus regenning a little bit more modestly, there are some losses in every time you increase amperage that you push through some component, you're going to generate heat, and that heat is energy loss. So using regen a little more gently, like not letting off hard, but rather let off a little bit more gently and let the car take a little bit more time to slow down, is more efficient. Now, there is a sort of a balance point there, because if you regen too gradually, you have wind resistance slowing you down at a more rapid rate than you're gaining energy back. And so there is sort of a balance there. And over time, you develop sort of a sixth sense to this, really. You begin to get used to how the car is going to perform best, and that. I used to be a member of an online forum called Eco Modder, for people that mod their cars for eco reasons. Really cool website. There were guys there that were getting over 100 miles to the gallon on gas-only cars. I mean, but these are guys that were going absolutely nuts with it. But typically, you can expect to see anywhere from 25 to maybe 40% gas mileage improvement just by making some simple changes. And one of the things that the guys on that forum used to say all the time is the number one way to increase the range in your car is by, and they had this cool saying, by adjusting the nut behind the wheel. And the first time I read that, I thought, what nut behind the, oh gosh, I'm the nut behind the wheel. So, and it's very true that achieving good range, yes, vehicle design matters. I mean, you know, this car has a very low coefficient of drag. It's got the stock wheels and tires are very low rolling resistance, and all of that's primary. But beyond the design, you can adjust the nut behind the wheel. Anyone that's tried to lose weight knows that you have your body's design. You have your genetics, right? Some people are genetically heavier than others. Some people are genetically thin as a rail. You can't change your genetics, but what you can do is adjust the nut behind the fork and change the way you eat. I know a couple of people that can't seem to gain weight no matter how many calories they eat. And some people think that's a blessing, but there are problems related to that, as well as people that gain weight no matter how little they eat, or seemingly. So there are, I know people on both ends of the spectrum, but you can, if you have a hard time gaining weight, you can adjust your eating to try to gain more and be more in the healthy range. And if you have a hard time losing weight, you can still lose some weight by adjusting how you eat. The same thing can be said for vehicles. If you're driving a huge, SUV of some sort, or an old muscle car or whatever, okay, that 12 mile to the gallon car, you're never going to get 40 miles to the gallon out of it. I don't care what you do, unless you're just coasting in neutral down a mountain. But I mean, round trip, you're never going to get that kind of mileage out of it. But maybe you can take that 12 miles rated miles per gallon up to 14 or 15. That's really not the end of the world to do. Maybe even 16 to 18 miles per gallon. And by the same token, if you're driving a Model 3, you're never going to see a horrible energy equivalent of 5 miles per gallon or whatever. Even if you're on a track, I don't think you'd see efficiency of 5 mpge, because it's in an inherently efficient car. The old muscle car is inherently inefficient. So, but what you can do is, I could take this very efficient car, drive it really hard, and reduce my efficiency, or I could take that horribly inefficient vehicle, drive it very carefully, and improve my efficiency. So one other kind of cool thing you can do, I mentioned tire pressure. So I try and keep my tire pressure right up around 50 psi, and that is a safe pressure for the tires. And what happens is, the higher the psi of the tires, the smaller your tire contact patch is with the pavement. So you minimize rolling resistance or friction on the road. Now, you do reduce traction a bit, but not as much as you might think, because when you reduce the tread patch size, yeah, you have less tread patch on the pavement, but there's still the same amount of weight on that tire, so you have increased the pounds per square inch of pressure on the contact patch that's there. So you do lose some grip by increasing tire pressure, but what you want to do, you don't lose it as much as you think. And what you want to do is stay within the tire manufacturer's pressure, maximum pressure rating, which I do. And you want to make sure that the car isn't driving strangely if you inflate your tires up to the max. So inflate your tires to the maximum allowable by the manufacturers, and that'll be listed on the sidewall of the tires. That's something that could really help. Right now, I am at 179 watt hours per mile. So I'll go ahead and get a picture of that for you and post it on the screen here. So I've gone 12.8 miles at 179 watt hours per mile. And I can typically, if I'm driving carefully, be in the high 180s. I'd say 187, 188 is where I can typically end the day if the weather allows for it. It has to be warm. That's another thing. Cold weather, it's not just the temperature of the battery, but air density increases when the weather gets cold, and it really does make a big difference. A lot of people may not think of this, but if it's, say, 40 degrees out, there's no way I'd be able to beat 200 watt hours per mile. It's just not going to happen. I would say that ideally, probably 70 to 75 degrees is best. You get hotter than that, and then the tires are hotter. It makes the rubber more sticky, and they stick to the pavement and increase the rolling resistance. And also, you'll find yourself opening the windows to cool off the cabin, and that creates drag. The faster you go, the more drag you have there. Or you're using the AC or the fan, and that will use up energy as well. So too hot can reduce your range also. All right, well, so far today I've gone 157 miles and 196 watt hours per mile. I'm still about 8 miles away from home, and so I'll end the day just shy of 200 watt hours per mile. As I started this video, I had mentioned that I'm typically at 188 watt hours per mile or thereabouts, high 180s. Today is 196, mainly because it was pouring rain for a portion of the day, and that really does kill your efficiency. So yeah, when it comes to driving the car efficiently, the main thing is to avoid flooring it as much as possible, to ease into the throttle. And as far as regen goes, I use regen. Obviously, you want to minimize how much the mechanical brakes work and use the regen, but
it's better to use a smaller amount of regen because it will more efficiently pass the current into the battery. Beyond that, it's knowing your surroundings, knowing when you can, when you have a downhill slope coming up and you can coast a bit, and you can either shift into neutral to coast, or you could just modulate the accelerator pedal so that the energy use or regen bar is centered, and then you're coasting as well. So I just wanted to show what you can get out of the car if you're careful in the way you drive it. I started the day today where it showed 285 miles of range available. I've got 144 left, so it says, and I've used 157. So that means that I would be at 301 miles of driving if I were to, on this charge, charging to 90%, if I were to maintain the same, if I were to keep my efficiency going, I would be over 300 miles, not the 285 that I started the day with. So kind of interesting how this works, but mostly driving around town and rather than the expressway, and minimizing your acceleration, and also the weather. If it's say 50 degrees or warmer and not raining, that's really where your efficiency is going to be maxed out. Also, the 18-inch tires are much more efficient than the 19s or 20s. So anyway, that's just some interesting info for you guys for today. Go ahead and give me a thumbs up, and my referral code will be a link in the description below. I've been getting a referral every day or two. With Tesla offering 5,000 free supercharger miles, I think it's pushing people to order cars. So go ahead and use my referral code if you'd like. So thanks everyone. You guys have yourselves a wonderful day, and yeah, I'll see you in a couple more days. Bye-bye now.